And I will try to keep the introduction brief, but as the district attorney for Orange County, there is not a whole lot that brevity can do. Our guest today has accomplished a lot during his career, and I just want to share a little bit of his background with you. This is District Attorney Tony Rackauckas, who is here visiting us from Orange County. He was the second born of 6 children to Maria Socorro Limon and Anthony Joseph Rackauckas. On his mother's side, Tony is the second generation born and raised in the United States. His maternal grandparents, Alejandro and Carolina Limon, immigrated to the United States from Hermosillo, Sonora, Mexico, and settled in Arizona to begin a new life with their family. I just wanted to share that background with you because I thought it was especially poignant. Mr. Rackauckas went on to study political science at CSU Long Beach. He earned his JD from Loyola Law School here in Los Angeles, and then began a distinguished legal career joining the Orange County District Attorney's Office, where he worked as a deputy district attorney. He was appointed as a municipal court judge in 1990 by Governor George Duke-Majan, and then Governor Wilson appointed him to the Superior Court, where he was named its presiding judge of the appellate department in 1996. Moving into elected office, Mr. Rackauckas was first elected district attorney of Orange County in 1998, becoming the first person from outside the district attorney's office to take that position directly. He was then reelected in March of 2002, 2006, and 2010. Most recently, he has led the department, and I will share a bit of personal background. He is my sister's boss. My oldest sister, Carolyn, is a deputy district attorney within the jurisdiction of Mr. Rackauckas. And of course, it certainly doesn't have to be said, but as is true with all public servants, Mr. Rackauckas is entirely grateful for the privilege of having spent his life serving the public. With no further ado, let me introduce Orange County District Attorney Tony Rackauckas.
I have this. Okay. Is this working?
Yes.
Well, all right. That was way too much buildup to begin with. I tell you, because I'm watching here, and I'm mostly learning. And I mean, the job that you folks have been doing is tremendous. And Lisa and Scott, thank you for your presentation. And Dr. Hurd, I think you did a terrific job. So, like I said, I'm mostly learning here, and whether or not I have any useful information to depart, to share with you, I question that really. But I'm looking at it from the from a law enforcement perspective, and I think we're going to start with a brief trailer from behind the orange curtain.
It's the OC, baby. I love living here.
Orange County is a fantastic place. The natural beauty in Orange County is unsurpassed.
There is tremendous wealth here, no doubt about it.
Everybody thinks Orange County is the place to live. It's like the perfect world here, but that's on the outside.
A lot of calls involving teen prescription drug overdoses.
On the inside, it's a different story right now. It's an epidemic.
It's actually becoming an epidemic.
I wouldn't have thought in a million years that I would have had a son that was addicted to drugs.
First time I did prescription drugs, I was 13.
I started drinking when I was like 12 years old in 6th grade.
I was 12 years old when I started getting involved with drugs.
Started going to raves and doing ecstasy around 18, and then I was just spiraled out of control from there.
There's the parents that have done the drugs, that know about the drugs, and there's the parents that are the squares that have never gotten high in their life, and they have kids that are on heroin. How are they supposed to know if their kids are on heroin? Unless somebody tells them, or they get a phone call that says, you're gonna have to come down and identify your son.
When I was in the coma, I couldn't walk. It was hot.
This is my sister Jessica Silver's ashes.
And I've been to 13 funerals in the last whole 12 months.
6:59 a.m., they found my son, face down, laying in the dirt.
If you could go back, would you use drugs, alcohol, or marijuana, Aaron? One for yes, two for no.
I don't want to tell you the truth,
Because when I'm active in my addiction, I don't want help.
So that documentary was produced by a lady whose daughter's best friend had died of an overdose, and she was moved to put that together. So what I'm going to talk about is just to give you it'll just give you an overview of what we're seeing in our county, Orange County, just to the south of you here. And I think that of course that'll I think it relates to what's happening here in Los Angeles County, of course, a great deal. We just talk about a little bit about the perspective and what we're seeing, and then what we're trying to do in law enforcement in Orange County about it. And so, just moving forward here, just in the last few years, what we can see with respect to oxycodone, which is OxyContin, you can see that there's been an increase in its use. This goes back to 2010. Is this on? All right. So going back to 2010, what we're seeing is that I did something wrong here.
Go ahead. Keep going. Try it again.
Okay, so the problem is the feedback, I'm assuming. So maybe I should just hold that.
Box here. Okay, that's on.
We're already a little bit late. I'm going to run it a little bit later. All right, so what we're seeing just in the last 4 years here, and you can see that the millions of oxycodone pills that are being used. Now, this is just Orange County here, and we have an 8% increase in the pills, but a 37% increase in the prescriptions. And why that is, not too certain, but sounds like more prescriptions for smaller doses. So apparently, doctors they're becoming a little less willing to write prescriptions for larger amounts of pills all at the same time. But still, so there's still an increase. So as you all know, the accessibility of the drugs contributes to the prevalence. Teens are getting them out of their parents' cabinets. And the first statistic is a nationwide statistic from 2009, cited by the Orange County Healthcare Agency report on prescription and over-the-counter drug abuse. The second comes from California Healthy Kids Survey, which is administered to public school kids every other year. So the few slides that we're showing here really show that we're just like the rest of the nation. We have a big problem. So these stats or statistics are for kids grades 9 to 11. The first bars are for trying the drug at any point, for trying the drug for a non-prescription use at any time, one time or more. The second one shows rates among 9th graders and 11th graders for those who took the prescription opioids more than 4 times for non-medical use. And that's from the Healthy Kids Survey. It's a self-reporting survey. In 1996, when we started collecting data, the most common drugs we saw in our prosecutions were methamphetamine and cocaine. When we handled driving under the influence cases, the cases were rarely submitted where the drivers had less than a 0.08 blood alcohol level. There really weren't any special screenings at the time for opioids or prescription drugs, which you in the medical field know can have a synergistic effect on with alcohol and a tremendous effect on driving. The numbers for crimes associated with opioids and heroin have gone up dramatically, in the last 15 years. So you can see these from 2009 to 2013. The first set of bars is heroin-only cases. So these are cases of unlawful possession of heroin, transportation, this sort of thing. The second one is heroin evidence, where there's evidence of heroin in other cases. And so you can see the increase in the heroin use during these last few years. This opioid now what you're seeing here is prosecutions for concerning opioids, and these are just taken. This is just from the Orange County District Attorney's Office, and these are our what we get from our case management computer. That we just basically got these numbers to we're able to look at what we've had in the past years, and these are just for filed cases involving most of the common prescription opioids, including unlawful possession, possession for sale, transportation, under the influence, and forged prescriptions. And you can see that that the numbers have multiplied tenfold from 1996 to, and this is 2013. And then the next one, prescriptions for heroin, or prosecutions, excuse me, for heroin. And these are prosecutions for heroin use, for not just heroin use, excuse me, but possession for sale, transportation, under the influence of heroin. And you can see the growth from 1996 almost looks like an anomaly of some sort, but it really was a low year. But then you can see how it's increased in the last few years, from 2009 to 2013, and it's still on the increase in 2014. But we don't have that bar. But go back to that. Oh, and by the way, this is Tracy Hughes over here, and Tracy is a senior deputy district attorney, and she put these slides together. I wouldn't possibly be able to do it, and but if there's anything wrong, if you see anything misspelling or anything like that, all right. So what strikes me about this, and what has stricken me about this particular item here, is that you notice the heroin use problem, heroin use, heroin sale, heroin addictions. And it's consistent with heroin overdoses that have been increasing in our county during this time, and those heroin overdoses are also consistent with the increase in opioid use, the use of the various pain-killing opioid drugs. And what we're seeing is people are using opioids for, or they're getting prescriptions. They're using them for chronic pain relief, and becoming addicted, and needing more of the drug. And as they become addicted and they need more, it might be getting difficult for them to get continued prescriptions, and or maybe the prescriptions aren't for enough, but they're turning to heroin use. And it's really kind of surprising to see the people who are dying from heroin overdoses. The demographic of that has changed in the last several years. From I mean, it's not the typical heroin junkie that we used to see years ago. It's changed now. And a lot of the heroin overdoses and deaths are middle class people who are just becoming addicted because of this ongoing pain medication, and becoming addicted to these opioids, and then changing. They get to the point where they will buy heroin from a criminal drug dealer on the street because that addiction is so strong. So we're seeing a high number of opioid related cases, and they're coming through these are coming through our system as a result of this epidemic, and we've identified these already. What we identified already was like the possession and the use and the sale and that sort of thing. But what we didn't already identify, and we're seeing more of commercial burglaries, burglaries of pharmacies for prescription drugs, doctors unlawfully prescribing drugs for profit, and insurance fraud. We're getting some really surprising insurance fraud cases, but we have an insurance fraud case now that we're working on that we filed, and we're working on in our county. It's a $300 million case of fraudulent insurance billing, where basically a small group put together a prescription rubbing compound or a compound to help with that they claim would reduce pain in the joints, and like I say, it's a compound, and doctors were sold on the idea of prescribing this compound, and the doctors were making money on it, what it consisted of was tramadol, an opioid, amitriptyline, an antipsychotic drug, and dextromethorphan. Somebody might know how to say that, but that's something that you find in cough syrup. So at any rate, they put this combination together, and basically it's like a snake oil. They claim that it does all of these different things, and they charge $2,000 a jar for it, and then the doctors are recommending that they get a few jars. So then the insurance company gets billed, and now, like I say, $300 million. So it's a huge fraud case. Can we play Dr. Yee? Will that play? Otherwise, I'll just describe it a little bit. Yeah, there we go. One second, we have to get the mic on. We're also running the That's not it. He never asked his so-called patient, his customer, he never asked him about any pain. He never did any kind of physical examination. And by the way, this was at a Starbucks. And so what Dr. E was doing is he was going to some different Starbucks and meeting, I guess, customers there and prescribing these large amounts of drugs. Now, this was this tape that you saw was part of an undercover investigation done by the DEA, and he's been prosecuted, and he's in federal prison, and he's doing 11 years. But and he's not, I hate to say this, but he's not the only doctor in Orange County or Los Angeles County doing these things. But that actually was a really good investigation. So the evidence came out really good. Now, so we're in a hurry here, and we're running late. So I think I'm just gonna skip a lot of this stuff and just get to the last, pretty much just get to the last part. I'll tell you that what's happening in Orange County. We're seeing all of this crime, all this associated with these drugs, and you know, there's a lot of money, and when there's a lot of money, it seems to be crime associated with that, because people are, you know, they want to get the money, and they don't want to do all of the things necessary for it. Now, we've done a lot of things. I mean, we have special prosecutors assigned to driving under the influence of drug cases. This has been, and I mentioned earlier that we didn't see a few years back, we didn't prosecute many cases where the blood alcohol level was less than 0.08, and which is the legal limit for driving under the influence of alcohol. Although we were seeing people with a lot of symptoms who were under 0.08, and so we needed to develop some expertise to determine that. So we've gotten some grants, and we've done a lot of work, and we have deputy DAs who have developed an expertise in driving under the influence of drugs, and we have the crime lab our Orange County Crime Lab has increased our ability to do toxicology exams and determine the presence of drugs in these people who are driving, and also other things as well. So we're doing that. We've found it necessary to have a deputy DA assigned to cases where people have died from drug overdoses prescribed by doctors who have distributed too much in the way of drugs, and so we're working on some of those types of things. We're doing some investigations along that line. Nothing that the press would be interested today about, but maybe at some point. And another thing that we're doing is this. A civil case. I mean, you know, as a district attorney, we're able to use in California, not just California, but particularly in California, we have a law against unfair business practices and against false and misleading advertising. And our research has basically made it really clear that a lot of this problem is created by the drug manufacturers themselves. And basically what they've tried to do is to increase the market. So we get these drugs like Oxycodone and these various opioid drugs, and they're approved for use by the FDA in very limited circumstances for palliative care kind of treatment, for extreme pain, that's a part of, say, cancer treatment. But that's kind of a narrow market. So what they've done is through their advertising and the way that they've sent out representatives to various doctors' offices and even made representations at CME classes, they've expanded that market by working to convince doctors and other people as well that these opioid drugs are not as dangerous as people think they are, and as we know they are. In fact, what we're getting, we're hearing that in some of their advertisements and some of the things that they're saying that less than 1% of people who use these opioids under a doctor's care would become addicted, and that's not even close. And so we found it necessary to bring a civil case against the 5 major companies that are distributing these, or that manufacture and distribute these opioid drugs. And I know that's going to be probably a pretty long and hard fight, but I think that we need to be involved in that struggle because we need to make sure that these companies come clean with all of the people that they're dealing with, that they properly represent the nature of the drugs that they're selling, and that they make sure that the doctors know and get these prescriptions down to what they're supposed to be used for. So, if anybody has any questions, I can try to deal with them.
Sorry for rushing you, but it was a great talk, and I really admire what you're doing, and you're helping fighting this battle as well as us researchers and clinical people. So it's a great job. Time for a few questions.
Thank you for your presentation. I'm a mental health clinician. I work primarily with veterans, military veterans. But my question is, the State Bar of California has a lawyer's assistance program designed for attorneys that find themselves in trouble, if you will, with the State Bar. Do physicians have a similar program for physicians that misuse the privilege like we saw in the video, for example?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I'm afraid I don't know the answer to that. Tracy, to you?
Yeah, well, there's a medical board that's...
Stand up.
The doctor at the school could probably tell you this better, but there is a medical board that's supposed to oversee the doctors, and if there's a problem with a doctor practicing and he's addicted to drugs himself or he's doing something wrong, then they're supposed to regulate the license. But as the reporters pointed out, there's these doctors that have 14 bodies and nothing's being done yet. So.
Yes, there's a question up here.
It's not a question that you answered. A few years ago, Consumer Affairs used to have a program that was funded, and I think it's been about 8 years ago that actually regulated that, and I don't know any other department that picked that back up, that they would have any licensed medical personnel, MDs, RNs, PAs, that would have medical oversight. I don't know if they actually, any other government agency has picked that back up again. The medical licensing board, I don't know if they actually run the same type of program that Consumer Affairs did with that.
I don't have a question, but it's just a comment. When you use opioids, over time you get tolerance to opioids, the analgesic effect especially. So there is a differential development of tolerance to different effects of it. And especially people use alcohol or other addictive drugs, they become very sensitive to the rewarding action. So a low dose can produce reward in those individuals. But what happens is, if they are used for pain management, unfortunately, there is tolerance to the analgesic effect. Therefore, they need to use higher doses, and that sometimes leads to overdose. And that's something we should all be aware of it.
But a question I wonder about from the DA's perspective is, once imprisoned, how do we get treatment for, even though I think the physicians have done a bad job, but treatments for the people who are being prosecuted? Can you speak to like the drug courts? I don't know how California is, because unfortunately just locking up the person without, I think, getting them some form of treatment, and hopefully we'll have more treatments available, I think is really critical. So as the numbers go up, we have a huge problem, because we're seeing all these people dying, all these people going in prisons. But I wonder how what do you guys do here in terms of helping them not to keep coming back through the system? And is there drug courts and treatment programs
Sure.
that they must go into?
Sure. Yeah, the question is what do we do to try to keep people from coming back, people who are addicted to drugs? First of all, let me say that we don't really have a lot of people in prison simply because of the use of drugs. And the big, large majority of cases where somebody's prosecuted for possession of drugs, for being under the influence of drugs, or for possession for sale of small amounts of drugs, they get diversion programs. And the diversion programs are where they're diverted away from the criminal justice system and into treatment. And there's a couple of big major diversion programs. One is the Penal Code Section 1000, where many thousands of people get diverted just in our county annually. And then there's another one that we call Proposition 36, and those are another drug treatment situation. And so our healthcare department and our county attempts to treat many thousands of people every year for drug use. And it's a miserable failure, in case you're wondering. I mean, the success, and they tout various success rates, and usually when they talk, these programs talk about their success in the program, and they count success as somebody who went to all the classes, or right, and they're not counting whether or not they use again, 6 months down the road or a year down the road, and I think what we find, and I think you'd probably be aware of the same thing, but success in terms of people not using drugs again for a period of a few years, like say 5 years, I think that the success rate is less than 3%. So a good 97% of the people who are addicted who go to treatment continue to use drugs after the treatment. So it's a huge expense. That's a terrible failure.